How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to another video. So this video is going to be me going over my top 5 undervalued comics. This is a challenge that was issued to me from Matt Likes Comics, so I highly recommend you pop over and check his channel out right after this. And I'm not going to lie, when I got this challenge, I was thinking it was going to be extremely easy. As a DC collector, I like to believe that most of the books I have are undervalued. When I really started to stop and look at it, though, a lot of the books I have that I believe are undervalued, I understand why they're undervalued. I still believe they should not be, but I understand it, so it was harder and harder for me to kind of whittle down 5 books I wanted to pick for this video. It was also extremely hard to pick 5 books because I didn't want to show a lot of the books that you guys have been seeing recently, even if those were some of the ones I was kind of leaning towards. I also didn't want to show you guys all just graded comics I have. As a lot of you guys know, if you're checking out my channel, I have a decent amount of raw comics in all of my short and long boxes, but most of my comics that have any kind of key significance or first appearance value associated with them, most of those comics I do have graded. So my 5 books I have today, 3 ended up being graded, 2 ended up being raw, and probably to Matt's surprise, I even snuck a little bit of Marvel in there. So these are books that I had to think long and hard about. Why do I believe that they are undervalued, especially when compared with everything else? And these were the books I settled on. So without further ado, we'll check out the first book and then we'll get into it a little deeper. Alright, so the first book we have here is Arkham Asylum, Living Hell, Issue 1. So this series, if nobody has actually read it, I highly recommend you check it out. It is actually very, very good. It features Batman very minimally. The story is not about him. He pops in now and then, but for the most part, this story has nothing to do with him. It follows the main character of Warren White, who, this issue right here, is the first appearance of Warren White, Death Rattle, and Jane Doe. The big significance with that is Warren White would go on to become White Shark, Great White Shark. While not a huge, notable Batman villain, he is still a pretty cool and obscure villain, and as you guys know, I love the big books and the big bads as much as everybody, but for some reason I've really gone down this rabbit hole of pecking off the more obscure random characters, and not only is Great White Shark one of them, this whole story kind of follows him as the main character and shows, yes, he starts out as Warren White, but as more and more happens to him in Arkham Asylum, trying to survive, he loses a little piece of himself almost every issue, literally and metaphorically, until he's the Great White Shark that we know in comics for the villain now. So this is issue 1, a great start of an amazing series. It is the first appearance of 3 Batman villain rogue characters, as well as it is just probably on nobody's radar. So for my first undervalued comic, and I'm sticking with ones that I have currently in my collection just to keep it a little easier, my first pick is Arkham Asylum, Living Hell for those reasons. Alright, on my next book, I'm going to cheat a little bit because I'm going to use another book as an example when we get to it. But for my next book I have for undervalued comics in my collection, we have my next raw, and we are going to go with Batman, issue 221. So this I'm going to kind of pair off of the classic Batman 227. Everybody loves Batman 227 because not only is it Neil Adams' classic, but it is homaging the very famous Detective Comics issue 31, which everybody wants that book. And in addition to Neil Adams doing an amazing job with his cover later on, that's kind of the book you settle for if you can't afford that, which many cannot. The thing that I never got is that all of Neil Adams' covers right around that stretch of era that he was doing on Batman are all just as amazing. And yes, that one leans a little bit into the horror aspect, which again is kind of a niche crowd, so I get that it gets more people coming in. But other than that, it really just has that horror and the homage going for it. There's no real key significance. It is just an amazing cover. So I never understood why the other Neil Adams covers right around it, whether it was right before or after, are going for significantly less. Like, that book goes for some primo money. Whereas this one right here like I said, issue Batman 221 is another perfect example of everything Neal Adams does right. You have his detailing, his shadow work, that he's great by using darkness and shadows, as well as I've mentioned many times before, he is a master at perspective play in his covers. Batman is always kind of up out of somewhere, looking down on something, or vice versa, and he utilizes that extremely well. So this one, you have the massive mob down below looking for Batman. You have all of the bats flying out, and they go from that just solid black to hints of light to that purple undertone on it. So the use of color is great as well. This is one of my favorite Batman Neal Adams covers that I don't, again, understand why, along with other ones, this one especially does not get much more love and command more of a premium like 227 does. And another good example that I'm going to use to kind of boost this book up, so we've kind of compared it against Batman 227, but the other book that I'm going to kind of use to show against this one is 235, which again to me is almost just as an amazing cover. If you like 227, why would this one not be up there in that price and value also? So like I mentioned before with the perspective play, you've got Batman up in the treetop, he has ditched his cape and cowl in the swamp, and then you have, which I believe is Talia al Ghul and the Henchman right here. So you have that shadow work again, the same kind of horror elements with you have that almost like castle in the background, you're in the swamp, there's that anxiety that Batman is being hunted right now, and he's quite literally ditching some of his outfit, using his wits to get out of this. So this cover again, while might not have as much of the cool color aspects going for it, also does deal with a little bit of the horror themes that 227 has. So again, not worth nearly as much money as Batman 227. So between this book and my official nominee, Batman that we have right here, I do not understand why this one does not command much more for the Neal Adams fan. So that's about it for that one. Let's move on to the next book I believe is extremely undervalued. Alright, I showed this one off very recently, but it still holds true that I believe it should be worth more. This is Demon Number 1 by Jack Kirby. This is a character that has popped up in numerous animated shows, numerous stories. He's had his own stories, his own ongoing. He's had multiple volumes. There was the original right here with Kirby. I don't know how many after, but there was at least a second volume that followed. And given that the grades you can get this in for the price, this is a 9.4, white pages, and not gonna lie, I wanna say I got it for around $500, which I know is not cheap. If you were looking for any other notable characters, anything in the 9s is gonna cost you probably well over at least in the 1,000 or more range. So you have the first appearance of a DC character that's been used many times before in both TV and print, and you have anybody that's a fan of Jack Kirby. This is pure Jack Kirby goodness right here. I never understood why this thing did not go for much more. I know it's not like a Silver Age book where it's extremely hard to find, but you still don't see a crazy amount in high grades, especially compared with a lot of modern books that are selling for, again, even modern books, not in a 9.8. Certain ones are going for more than this guy is right now. It has boggled my mind, but this will be my next entry, Demon Number 1, and let's move on to the next book. Alright, next up on my list is Doom Patrol issue 99. This is the first appearance of Beast Boy. And so, while I have this in an 8.0, it is by no means cheap, but this Silver Age book is still extremely under what even a lot of DC Silver Age heroes are going for, definitely what a lot of Marvel heroes are going for. Again, not even superheroes, but the villains. A lot of the Spider-Man villains you guys see behind me right here, if you were to get any of those in an 8.0, you are well over that $1,000 range. For sure, 100%. This one in an 8.0, like I said, was not cheap, but I got it for under $1,000. So an 8.0 of a very important character. Beast Boy has been in, again, let's start off again with the Teen Titans show, Teen Titans Go, so you have even more of a fan base of the younger kids that love that. I watched that with my little brother. I really enjoyed it. Along with all of the Titan shows that you have going on in live action, all of the stories that Beast Boy has been in with the Teen Titans right now. especially where you have the main group of Teen Titans that everybody knows now, Cyborg, Starfire, Raven, that came much later down the road. Beast Boy being this much earlier than all of them, I absolutely cannot understand why this book is not worth so much more than it is. This is a character that is not that obscure. He's part of a very popular team. Everybody knows who Beast Boy is. He's a fun, great character. And this book should be worth way more than it is. I'm happy it isn't, because I was able to get a sweet grade for not nearly as much as what I believe it should be for. But with that said, Doom Patrol 99. Let's move on to the last book. Alright, I doubt anybody who's been watching my channel thought this book was going to pop up on my list today. We have Amazing Spider-Man 101, the first appearance of Michael Morbius. And given that I've been trying to go a little bit higher grade for my books lately, the fact that I have a 4.5 should tell you right around when I probably got this, which I did not get it at the peak before the movie came out, but I didn't get it that long after that. So right now, that movie, Morbius, has tanked this book so hard, undeservedly, that you can now get pretty decent copies for, compared to, again, with all the counterparts, comparatively extremely cheap compared to the rest of Spider-Man's rogues. And again, unfairly so. Just because the movie was not great, I myself did not watch it, this book I still believe should be worth way more than it is. I know it's not one of the older ones, the nice 12 centers with some of his more popular rogues like Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, but it is still an extremely cool rogue character that popped up early on in the Spider-Man series. And again, growing up in the 90s, I again was a huge fan of the 90s Spider-Man animated series. And I want to say that the, was it Neogenic Nightmare, I believe was what the episodes were called, that really dealt with Morbius becoming the vampire. In that same, 3 to 5 episode span, you had the Spider-Man right here growing the extra arms. I loved that storyline. The fact that the show kept it on for that many issues, introducing this awesome character. This book, again, it shouldn't be worth as much as some of the others in certain grades, but it should be worth more than it is right now. Just because we had a live action movie that was not so great should not tank this book as much as it did. I love this book as well. The cover alone, the fact that you have that, again, I love perspective play. You have the staircase right now, you have the window with the moon, Morbius just slapping Spider-Man right off of those things. And again, I love that almost like Goro-esque of Spider-Man with those extra arms right there. This is one of my favorite covers for his first appearances covers, which again, I know it's not as old as the others, but personally, I believe this should be worth way more than it is. Alright, so there we have it. Those are what I'm going to settle on, and again, I chose to do my personal top 5 undervalued comics in my collection. Matt, I have to say, like I said, I thought this challenge was going to be a lot easier because of a lot of DC, there's a lot of books that I believe should be worth more money, but logically, I can make sense why some of them are not. I've shown off recently Boy Commandos issue 15 I picked up. That's the first appearance of Crazy Quilt. And I get nobody knows who that character is or they don't care. But come on, that is Jack Kirby goodness from the 1940s in high grade. Definitely should be worth more than it is. But because I can understand why it's not, that's why books like that and other DC books did not make my list. So, thank you, Matt, very much for submitting this challenge to me. And again, that is Matt from Matt Likes Comics. So anybody that checked this video out, pop over there, check his stuff out, please. Anybody that I would nominate that I know and I feel comfortable enough nominating have already done this challenge. So sadly, Matt, I'm going to let this one die with me right here. But thank you for giving me this. It made me really go through, look at the books I have. What do I find value in? What do I think should be worth more value? And hopefully there was a fun little mix of books that I'm sure some were very predictable, and I'm hoping others were not. So, thank you for checking out this video. Until next time.